Trump administration plans to revoke visas for Chinese students in the US with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Detailing the order, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that he will revise visa criteria to enhance scrutiny of future applicants from China and Hong Kong. The move is expected to impact a significant portion of the approximately 277,000 Chinese students currently studying in the US. While China has not yet responded to the US move to revoke the visas of Chinese students, it had earlier called on the US government to safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of international students. The Trump administration's crackdown on Chinese students comes a day after it halted the scheduling of new student visa appointments. Billionaire Elon Musk and Tesla CEO is departing the Trump administration after a tumultuous 130-day tenure as a special government employee in the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Musk announced his departure on social media, thanking President Donald Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. A White House official has confirmed that Musk's offboarding will begin tonight. The Trump administration has said DOGE's efforts to restructure and shrink the federal government will continue. A United Nations warehouse in war-torn Gaza was broken into by thousands of hungry Palestinians as aid trickled into the Palestinian enclave on the brink of famine. The World Food Programme said initial reports were that 2 people had died and several more were injured at the central Gaza warehouse. The UN agency appealed for an immediate scale-up of food aid to reassure people that they will not starve. Under growing international pressure, Israel ended an 11-week-long aid blockade on Gaza 10 days ago. It has allowed a limited amount of relief to be delivered via 2 avenues, the United Nations or the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Yemen's Houthi rebels have condemned the recent Israeli airstrikes on Sanaa International Airport. The strikes, which occurred on Wednesday, resulted in the destruction of a Yemeni Airways aircraft and disrupted airport operations. In a televised address, leader Al-Houthi reaffirmed his group's support for the Palestinian people, stating that the Israeli aggression aimed to pressure Yemen to abandon its stance on the Palestinian cause.
العدو الصهيوني يستهدف الطائرة الوحيدة 28 مايو 2025. هذه الطائرة الوحيدة الناجية استهدف العدو الصهيوني ودمر.
A US judge has blocked the deportation of Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil, a pro-Palestinian activist, saying that it was likely unconstitutional. Khalil was arrested on March 8th and his green card was revoked by the State Department under a little-used provision of US immigration law, granting the US Secretary of State the power to seek the deportation of any non-citizen whose presence in the country is deemed adverse to US foreign policy interests. Khalil and his supporters say his arrest and attempted deportation are violations of his right to freedom of speech under the US Constitution's First Amendment. Khalil is currently in immigration detention in Louisiana. Newark Judge Michael Fabiers has said that he will issue further orders on next steps. The Russian Defense Ministry has claimed the capture of 2 settlements in Ukraine. Russian forces have reportedly taken control of the village of Kostiantynivka in the Sumy region and the village of Zelienpol in Donetsk. In response, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said its Special Operations Forces and Security Service had launched a joint operation, striking 3 key military-industrial complexes in Russia with drones to weaken the country's arms production capabilities. Both sides have reported intercepting hundreds of drones over the past 24 hours. Portugal's far-right anti-establishment party, Chega, overtook the centre-left Socialists to become the main opposition party for the first time after the final tally of ballots from abroad in a May 18th snap parliamentary election. The centre-right Democratic Alliance of Prime Minister Luis Montenegro won 91 seats in the 230-seat single-chamber parliament, including 2 from out-of-country voting. On the election night, the Socialist Party emerged slightly ahead of Chega in terms of the share of the vote, but with the same 58 seats. The final tally published by the Interior Ministry on Wednesday took Chega's party parliamentary representation to 60, while the Socialist Party was left with 58. Founded just 6 years ago, Chega thus ended 5 decades of dominance by Portugal's 2 mainstream parties after the end of a fascist dictatorship in 1974, with similar advances for the hard right across Europe. South Korea has kicked off a 2-day early voting period for snap presidential elections to pick a new leader after Yoon Suk-yeol was removed from office over his short-lived imposition of martial law. There are 3,568 polling stations across the country open for early voting that will be allowed between May 29th and May 30th. Election day on the 13th of June is a public holiday, and voting will run from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. local time, with an indication of the results likely to start emerging that evening itself or early the next day. Two candidates for Mexico's Supreme Court closed their campaigns Wednesday ahead of the country's first judicial elections on the 1st of June. Linia Barters and Yasmin Esquivel are both sitting Supreme Court justices vying to stay in office under the new system. They are among more than 7,700 candidates competing for more than 2,600 positions at all events of the judiciary. Judges and court staff previously earned their positions and through merit and experience. Barters and Esquivel were nominated for the High Court of former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who led the push for the overall. Critics worry that electing judges will weaken checks and balances on government aid and stack the courts in favor of the ruling party. Harvard University will return a 175-year-old photograph of enslaved people, Renty and his daughter Delia, to the International African American Museum in South Carolina. The settlement marks the end of a 15-year battle between Lania and esteemed universities to release the 19th century daguerreotypes, a precursor to modern-day photographs. The photos were taken while they were enslaved, and they are believed to be the earliest photographs of enslaved people.
Proclaimed a victory for reparations. After 15 long years of struggle and strife, Harvard has at long last agreed.
French President Emmanuel Macron arrived at Yogyakarta International Airport, where he was warmly welcomed by Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. Following the welcoming ceremony, Macron and Prabowo departed the airport in a helicopter to the military academy. President Macron's visit to Indonesia is expected to further strengthen the strategic partnership between Indonesia and France, which has been realized in recent weeks. In a major success for Indian security forces in Jammu and Kashmir, 2 hybrid terrorists affiliated with Lashkar-e-Toiba were arrested in Shopian district. The 2 terrorist associates were arrested by the joint team of Indian Army, Jammu and Kashmir and the CRPF. Arms and ammunition, including 2 AK-56 rifles and 2 hand grenades, were also recovered from those arrested. Severe thunderstorms swept across Oklahoma, bringing dramatic flashes of lightning that illuminated the darkened skies. The US dollar rallied in knee-jerk reactions to a court blocking President Donald Trump from imposing his import tariffs on other countries, providing some relief for the currency that has struggled this year due to trade uncertainty. The Manhattan-based Court of International Trade said the US Constitution gives Congress exclusive authority to regulate commerce with other countries that is not overridden by the President's emergency powers to safeguard the US economy. US assets, including the dollar, equities and longer-dated treasury, both have witnessed sharp declines in recent months as investors Oil prices rose after a US court blocked most of President Donald Trump's tariffs from taking effect, while the market was watching out for potential new US sanctions curbing Russian crude flows and an OPEC Plus decision on hiking output in July. Brent crude futures climbed 1.2% to rise above $65 a barrel. US oil futures advanced at 1.3% to trade above 62 a barrel at 4:05 a.m. GMT. A US trade court ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by imposing across-the-board duties in imports from US trading partners. Personal computer maker HP Inc. cut its annual profit forecast as it expects a moderation in PC market growth at a time when the global economic environment remains volatile, sending its shares down 14% and extending. According to reports, the uncertainty also According to reports, the uncertainty surrounding US tariffs and associated inflationary pressures will negatively impact demand for personal computers in the following quarters in 2025. The company expects to offset the costs by the fourth quarter. HP now expects fiscal 2025 adjusted profit between $3 and $3.3 per share, down from its prior forecast. Nvidia beat quarterly sales expectations as customers stockpiled its AI chips before fresh US curbs on China exports took effect. But the same restrictions will slice off $8 billion in sales from the company, currently forcing the company to offer a forecast below Wall Street estimates. Shakes. Shares of the world's most valuable semiconductor film still rose 5% in extended trading as investors digested news that the hit in the current fiscal second quarter was not as bad as feared, and Nvidia talked up demand for its new Blackwell chips. The stock is relatively flat so far this year compared with 2024. When the shares nearly tripled in value, Nvidia now faces these restrictions on what it can sell, and the data center market is also maturing.